Wild for the Weekend is sponsored by the following supporters.
Hopcop Premium Meats are third-generation BC farmers, roaming pasture-fed, non-GMO, grain-finished cattle with no added hormones and steroids. We source local produce and specialty grocery selections located on Old Dewdney Trunk Road in Pitt Meadows. hopcopmeats.ca.
Hello everybody and welcome to Wild for the Weekend and our grains show. We're going to have some real good fun today. We're going to be working with some very ancient grains, some grains that were found in Tutankhamun's tomb. We're not actually cooking with his grains, but we are cooking with a derivative of it. Please come back and join us in a few minutes where we're going to have some fun with some wild grains on Wild for the Weekend. Welcome back to Wild for the Weekend. So grains, whole grains. This is an amazing section of food, and Canada actually has a really beautiful history around grains. So what I want to do first of all is I want to show you how to prepare the grain so that we can cook it. And really the simplest thing, I like to prepare the grain. You can soak grains for about an hour before you need to cook them or you want to cook them. But I like to soak mine overnight because what it does is it really infuses the flavor. It also starts the spouting process. It doesn't get to the spouting process, that actually takes a day or two, but it does start the spouting process. And so again, that nutrient and vitamin content is really growing within the grain. So there are various types of grains that we can use here. This grain that we're going to use today, one of the grains we're going to use is the red 5 grain. I love to keep my grains in a bottle. Really does a great job, keeps them beautifully fresh, also keeps them airtight, keeps them away from moisture, which is a key component, and they pour out of a bottle beautifully easily. When I fill the bottle, what I do is put a funnel in there and funnel them in. It's really simple. So I have a couple of cups of water here, and I just pour in maybe a cup or so of the grains. To that, I add a clove of garlic, just sliced up, rough slice, not too much. And then I put in a tablespoon or two of a dehydrated vegetable and allow all of that to just mix around. And one of the things in the grains that I use and the company that I use for our grains, again, go to the website, you're going to get a link to that, is that they are washed to a 99.9%. Soak them in there for 12 hours and keep that liqueur that they're soaking in, and that actually goes into the pots. And I don't know if you can see into these pots, but we're boiling away here some grains in that stock, beautifully done. And they take about 50 minutes or so to cook. So when we come back, we're going to be cooking with this red 5 grain. I'll see you in just 1 second on Wild for the Weekend. This dish is a really lovely, I love this dish in the fall, I love this dish in the springtime. I don't eat this too often in the summer, even if I do have squash left. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to prepare our squash. And I have butternut squash here. Butternut's the one that always has a little fat bum and a nice long neck of pure meat, which is really, really good. It's not like the other squash where the seeds are in the center of it. So this one's really good. So I'm just going to half this butternut squash. And what I would do is I would just pop the seeds out of this, just with a spoon, and rub this with a little bit of oil and a tiny little bit of fleur de sel. So just literally, just give it a rub, just on the top, inside, and a tiny little bit of fleur de sel. We do the same for both of them, and we pop them onto a tray and pop them into the oven. So let me just get this one prepared as well. And just take these seeds out. You can actually keep these seeds and roast them and have them with some seasoning on them in a movie. They're really good. Squash seeds are really nice, much like sunflowers. So again, a tiny little bit of olive oil, just rub it on a tray, and we'll pop that into the oven. It'll go into the oven for about 35 to 40 minutes or so. And I have some that are finished. Let me just grab them out. I love the way a butternut squash looks. It's just so beautiful. Just going to pop that there. In our skillet, I'm going to add some olive oil, a tablespoon or two of olive oil. And to that, I'm going to add some cherry tomatoes. And I leave the tomatoes whole, like I have been doing in the other recipes that we've been cooking. The reason is, if you leave the tomatoes whole when they go into the skillet, when they're cooked, they actually crack. So they show you when they're ready. It's really a perfect. And that's the measure for our sauce. We want to know when this filling is ready, and we'll know by the tomatoes have cracked. So to that, I'm going to add some kale. And we chiffonaded this kale. Chiffonade, it's a very, very fine shred of the kale. All we did was take the leaves, wrap them in on each other, and shred them super, super fine. And the reason that we want them fine is we want that bitterness within the kale to come out, because the rest of the vegetables are all soft and lovely flavors. So we want a little bit of that bitterness to come out. So some kale in there. And to that, I'm going to add some mushrooms, beautiful brown cap mushrooms. And I've just been soaking these to allow them to release some of the liqueur, because I need some of that liqueur in the mix. So don't worry about the mushrooms absorbing too much of the fluid, because they'll actually release it in the skillet when we're cooking. And if you're rehydrating from dehydrated mushrooms, again, liqueur for about an hour, and they'll come beautifully. They'll come back beautifully. And I'm just going to pour about a tablespoon or two of that lovely dark liqueur into the skillet there. And we let that saute, again, just until those tomatoes are cooked. And we're going to stuff a squash with them. Well, we're actually going to take the squash, and we're going to take out the filling from the squash first, and we're going to mix in all of the rest of the ingredients with that. So first of all, let's take out that beautiful, gorgeous orange. Look at the color of this. If you could just smell this, it's so rich and full-like. I just love it. So take out all of that beautiful flesh. And because we've cooked it to a beautiful, tender consistency, it's coming out really easily. I leave just a little bit in the bottom to keep the structure of the case of the squash. You don't want to rupture that case if you can avoid it. So leave a little bit in there. We're actually going to be able to eat that when we eat up the remainder of the dish as well. So there is our squash filling. I'm just going to put our squash on our plate and take this, and we're just going to rough chop this down. Not too creamy, not too fine, just rough chop that down. I'm just using the spoon for it, nothing too technical here. And to that, I'm going to add some of our capers, beautiful capers. About a tablespoon or so of capers. And in the skillet, I'm actually going to put in Kalamata olives. And I'm going to put them into the skillet because I want them to warm. And when they warm, they're going to release that really deep, delicious flavor. So I'm going to pop that in there. And take our squash and our caper mixture and pop that into our skillet as well. All of these beautiful colors. And now with that caper going in there, you really begin to get that beautiful briny smell coming through. And basically what we're doing here is we're sauteing gently and we're warming through. We don't want to overcook any of this. We don't want to have it mush down too far. Our last ingredient are the grains that we cooked. And these are the red fife grains mixed with a beautiful white wheat. And we mixed them both, and they both cook at slightly different times. So one will be a little al dente and one will be cooked. That's kind of fun. It's going to create a nice texture in the squash for us. And all that was a cup of the red fife and a cup of the white wheat, and we just mixed them together. Put in, these are still warm out from the skillet, so put in about a cup to a cup and a half of the grains into that skillet. These beautiful colors, the oranges and the mushrooms, the tomatoes, that lovely purple from the Kalamata olives. I'm going to add a little bit of fleur de sel and some fresh cracked black pepper, if I can find my grinder. I can't, so don't worry. We're just going to mix them around. So, how do we serve this dish? You'll notice that the tomatoes have started cracking, so they're getting ready, which is really cool. I'm going to take just spoonfuls, just turn this off for a second. Take just spoonfuls of this, and we're just going to put it into our casing again. You can, at this stage, you can re-enter this into the oven and bake it again. Put some breadcrumbs on top, maybe a little bit of cheese, and just bake it again. It will come through just beautifully. I like serving it in the squash case because there's some squash in there that's still beautifully tender that won't be the same flavor as the flavor of the squash that's coming out of the skillet, but it will have a really gorgeous taste. And I love to show what we've made from. So a little bit more, and this recipe is enough for a whole squash, which would serve 2 people. Quite simply, I garnish this with our fleur de sel. You know, we've been talking about it. Little white fleur de sel, because everything else is so folly and beautiful. And then I just take a couple of the fresh capers that are cool, and just on top. And that's going to give it a lovely kind of crisp note, very, very fresh on your palate when you're eating it. And so this is our red fife grain stuffed squash. I hope you enjoy this dish. This is really, really good for you. The beautiful element in this, the red fife grains have an enormous ability to reduce heart disease. They do an excellent job at reducing the the risk of stroke, and that can be reduced by almost 30% in a grown man, which is an amazing thing. So I encourage you to look at grains and move from starches and eat them. When we come back, we're going to cook another grain dish. This time we're going to cook with an emmer grain, which is a pharaonic grain, was originally discovered in the tomb of Tutankhamun. So please come back in just a moment or two for Wild for the Weekend.
Wild for the Weekend is sponsored by the following supporters.
Hopcop Premium Meats are third-generation BC farmers, roaming pasture-fed, non-GMO, grain-finished cattle with no added hormones and steroids. We source local produce and specialty grocery selections located on Old Dewdney Trunk Road in Pitt Meadows. hopcopmeats.ca. West Coast Wild Foods, foraged wild mushrooms and truffles harvested from the Northwest Territories to southern BC. westcoastwildfoods.com, a wild foods company.
Mobile Bandit is an app that helps you find local deals on your smartphone. Downloadable on all devices and no membership is required. Visit mobilebandit.com for more info. Golden Ears Cheeseworks, artisan cheese made in the Fraser Valley. Golden Ears Cheeseworks, cheese made with the family farm milk. 3-year cheddar, Yorkshire Blue, and Brie. Hagensport Chocolates is a boutique Vancouver-based chocolate company that has been producing European chocolate since 2006. Pure Verona chocolate.
Third generation family farm in the Fraser Valley. Fraser Valley Specialty Poultry has free-range duck and goose, duck sausage and smoked duck breast, organic chicken and ground duck patties. Fraser Valley Specialty Poultry in Chilliwack, BC. fvdg.com. Anita's Organic Flour and Mixes has over 20 years providing whole grain products from Canadian farmers. Anita's is certified organic grains, flour, cereals, mixes and sprouted products. Their granite stone mills and low temperature milling preserve the nutrition for whole grain food. anitasOrganic.com.
Welcome back to Wild for the Weekend, where we're continuing to cook with our beautiful grains. Let's get started. Into our skillet, which is lovely and hot right now. Again, tablespoon of olive oil just in there. Olive oil, regular virgin olive oil, not extra virgin olive oil. Extra virgin olive oil will burn, and we don't want that to happen. So use that for salads or finishing at the end. The flavor is intense at the end, and it doesn't need heat for it to come out. We're going to take our garlic and just slice it gently. And we're going to add to our skillet some onion. Just get that started. And then to that, in just a second or two, we're going to add the garlic. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a tip. If you add the garlic to the onions, and if you've already added salt to the onions, the garlic won't char as quickly as it would have had you not added salt. And the reason is that the salt actually brings out a whole bunch of fluid from the onion. And you want that to happen. So, just toss that around, and then now we can add our garlic in there. I sliced the garlic, I didn't mash it. Something happens chemically when you slice garlic. It loves it. It seems to change the flavor. when you roast garlic, you get that lovely, beautiful, nutty flavor. And when you slice garlic, you get a rich, creamy flavor. And I don't know why. I've asked and I've done some research and I can't find out why, but it is one of those odd chemical things in food. So that's sauteing off in there. We're going to add some peppers just for some color. Red and yellow, green, blue, black, whatever ones you've got around, add them in. The pepper is nice because it gives it just a little bit of a crunch, and we're not going to cook this through completely. We're actually going to allow them just to saute. So while it sautés gently there for a minute or two, let's talk a little bit about the health benefits that we get from these grains. As I mentioned earlier, the emmer grain that we're using here, this is a pharaonic grain. Was actually found along with a few other grains in the tomb of Tutankhamun, and only found in that tomb because basically every other tomb has been ransacked. But what's very interesting about this is the grains, the meat, the chicken, the fish, and the vegetables that were found in that tomb were all mummified. Every single one of them was dehydrated with a salt, and every single one of them was then wrapped in linen and was dipped in a syrup wax that allowed it to stop oxygen. And when they actually opened Tutankhamun's tomb, they were able to use the grains. They could have boiled the grains. And so that shows you the extent of the mummification. And the food was all kept in a separate room in the pyramids so that in the afterlife, the pharaoh could get up and dress and live normally and then go and eat in the other rooms. So it's very, very interesting. And in fact, the grains all came from the Syrian area. All of the grains came from the Syrian area that pharaohs ate. And Syria has a massive influence on the food that we eat today, which is really saddening when you see that the poor struggle that country's going through at this stage. Their depth of history is gargantuan. And I come from Europe where we think we have history and we don't have anywhere close to it. So let's take these boiled emmer grains, they're gorgeous, and pop them into our skillet. If you use the grains, you don't need to use proteins. We don't necessarily have to have fish or chicken. The grains have a huge amount of omega-3 in them. They are very, very good in selenium, and they are huge in potassium. They will lower heart rate disease by 30% if you use grains. So I encourage you to, every time you think about using pasta or rice, think about a grain instead. It's just the pre-soaking and then you're ready. So to the grains, this is where Jen came in and she influenced me. These beautiful chopped dried fruits. And in here we have dates, we have medjool dates, we have cranberries, we have raisins, a beautiful selection of gorgeous dehydrated fruits. So just put them in. We want to put about 2 to 3 tablespoons in there. You don't want to put too many in. We want it to get jammy, but we don't want it to be syrupy. And there's a real difference there between jammy and syrupy, and you're going to see that. This should be a dry dish at the end. It's very much a dish that we ate on a Saturday afternoon. It's beautiful cold, I'll give you that. We really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to put a tablespoon or 2 of stock in there. What happens is if you put the tablespoon of stock in there, it infuses with flavor, but it increases the temperature and evens out the temperature within the skillet. So everything gets warm at the same time. And if you don't, and because we don't want the fruit to become syrupy, it will hold it together. To that, we're going to add some chopped walnuts. Just add that in. So this has got a beautiful crunch. And if you don't like your grains cooked for the 50 minutes, cook them for 35 minutes. They'll have an al dente texture to them, and you'll really enjoy them. So literally, you let that saute around. Oh, that's a mess. We shall get a cloth and we shall clean that up. We're going to add finally to that some chopped parsley. Let me just put these under here. So we're going to get, we're going to put in, some cilantro. I think the cilantro will have a much sweeter flavor. It will bring out a really lovely element of the peppers. Well, they'll really enjoy this blend. So just a very rough farm chop. Nothing, you don't want to put full leaves in, but you don't want to put dust in there either. You want to see it. And they'll have a much richer and deeper flavor. So pop that in there. Mix them around. So we know about heart health. We know about the selenium that's in there, really good, especially emmer grains. Red fife and most other wheat grains, but emmer grains specifically increase the strength in your bones and in your teeth. And as we get older, that's an important thing for us. We're keeping our teeth longer, and so that's an important thing for us. So here we are, beautifully warmed. Let me just clean up a little, and we'll get to service. I'm going to put a little bit of cracked pepper in here. So at this stage, if you wanted to, this is where you could add prawns, or you could add some scallops. You could add a fish, but a denser fish, not a light fish, so not sole or something like that, but a denser, even an oiled fish, mackerel, those kind of things would do very, very well with this. And I just take it and we serve it on our beautiful Eclipse plate. Again, enough for about 2 people in this recipe. Just going to move this back a little bit and clean up our plate a tad. And again, just garnish this with, because we use the cilantro in this dish, we want to garnish this with some cilantro. Pop that in there. So there it is, Jen's Emmer Grain. One of the things that we learned today was the health benefits in using grains and the history of using grains, the fact that the red fife came to Canada and is the parent of every single wheat grain that we grow in this country. It's the parent. It's actually, Prince Charles actually came a few years ago and discovered red fife grains for the first time, took some back to Britain, and now when the Queen or the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge or any member of the royal family comes to Canada, all of them order red fife into the Rideau Hall, and they use it for their breads and for their starches instead of potatoes and things like that. I hope you've enjoyed cooking with grains. I've really tried to make it as simple as possible for you. Any questions at all, contact me through our website, but go to the website at wildfortheweekend.ca and we'll link you to the company that produces the grains here in the Lower Mainland. It's been a real joy cooking for you today, and we shall see you again in a few minutes. We are going to be doing some kitchen tips that stop the hazards and the dangers happening in the kitchen. Come back in just a few minutes on Wild for the Weekend.
Wild for the Weekend is sponsored by the following supporters.
Hopcop Premium Meats are third-generation BC farmers, roaming pasture-fed, non-GMO, grain-finished cattle with no added hormones and steroids. We source local produce and specialty grocery selections located on Old Dewdney Trunk Road in Pitt Meadows. hopcopmeats.ca. West Coast Wild Foods, foraged wild mushrooms and truffles harvested from the Northwest Territories to southern BC. westcoastwildfoods.com, a wild foods company.
Mobile Bandit is an app that helps you find local deals on your smartphone. Downloadable on all devices and no membership is required. Visit mobilebandit.com for more info. Golden Ears Cheeseworks, artisan cheese made in the Fraser Valley. Golden Ears Cheeseworks, cheese made with the family farm milk. 3-year cheddar, Yorkshire Blue, and Brie. Hagen's Board Chocolates is a boutique Vancouver-based chocolate company that has been producing European chocolate since 2006. Pure Verona chocolate. Third-generation family farm in the Fraser Valley. Fraser Valley Specialty Poultry has free-range duck and goose, duck sausage and smoked duck breast, organic chicken and ground duck patties. Fraser Valley Specialty Poultry in Chilliwack, BC. FVDG.com. Anita's Organic Flour and Mixes has over 20 years providing whole grain products from Canadian farmers. Anita's is certified organic grains, flour, cereals, mixes, and sprouted products. Their granite stone mills and low temperature milling preserve the nutrition for whole grain food. AnitasOrganic.com.
Here we are back in Wild for the Weekend. Thank you for keeping with us. We are going to have some fun with some tips and techniques in the kitchen. For instance, why would one have a wooden spoon on top of a pot in a kitchen? Do you know? I can tell you. The reason that you put a wooden spoon on top of a pot like this, remember when you were a kid and you used to see your grand's house always had 2 black lines on their wooden spoons? It's from them sitting them on the pots. And the reason is a pot with a wooden spoon on it will never boil over. It's not possible. Because when the bubbles hit the wood, they burst. The wood actually causes the bubble to burst in cream and in broth. So it will never, so if it was milk or if it was stock, it would never boil over. So top tip, wooden spoon over the top of your boiling pot. Your boiling pot will never boil over and hit the surface. Washing your fruits and vegetables and using a chemical to do it is a huge no-no. You've taken a great deal of time to buy organic and you just want to make sure there's no bacteria or anything on there. So washing them in that chemical is a massive no-no. So into our bowl, we have a cup of water. We're going to put into that some baking soda. And then we're going to put to that the juice of half a lemon. Our top tip, remember, was to put a fork into the lemon and just squeeze it and run around. Put that into a bottle, spray that onto your fruits and vegetables and give them a wash, and that is your fruit and veg cleaned. This is a great non-chemical way of cleaning your fruits and veg and ensuring that they're the best form that you can have. It's been a real joy working with you again today. Please come back and join us again soon. We're going to be cooking up some more beautiful wild things from British Columbia. I've really enjoyed it. We'll see you again soon on Wild for the Weekend.